Today, I'm talking about ethical AI and how it's being applied in the music industry. So if you're interested, I'll see you in the podcast. Did you know that about 95% of you haven't subscribed to this podcast? What are you waiting for? Click the subscribe button, hit the like button, leave a comment, and let us know. It really helps. Thanks. Hey everybody. Today I want to talk about ethical AI. It's a topic that's been around for a couple years now in various forms. There's been a lot of sort of discussions about laws being passed and regulations in America and in the EU. I'm not going to go into all the whole topic of ethical AI because it kind of changes a lot, but there's some things that's been going on just in the past month that I think that are kind of important, that are sort of shaping how this is going to evolve in the future. In a nutshell, ethical AI is basically just trying to approach AI in an ethical way, of course. So, that means using it for, non-nefarious purposes, doing things to make sure that people, nothing is against the law, making sure they're using it so AI isn't dangerous. We don't have killer autonomous robots like the Terminator, basically doing it in a way that you're not stealing personal data from people or copying people's intellectual property. And also in a way that is done so that the results that the AI gives out are real and they are ethical and fair. And so there's a pretty broad spectrum of topics that involve ethical AI. And like I said, it's going to be evolving a lot. There's going to be a lot of legal discussions, a lot of political discussions, a lot of change that's going to happen around this topic, both now and moving into the future. I think since generative AI came out a couple years ago, it was really eye-opening for a lot of people just how present this stuff is now and how it involves our lives and how we work and how we live and how we, conduct our businesses and how we are creative. And so this is a topic that's going to be around for a long time. But what I want to talk about today are some examples of just kind of how this is starting to shape, specifically for the music and entertainment industry. Now, there have been, I've done a couple podcasts in the past where I've talked about the new music platforms that are coming out, AI music platforms. One is called Suno and one is Udio. And I think both platforms are pretty amazing. It's pretty cool what they can do. You can basically just type in the description of a song and it'll write it for you. It'll make lyrics, it'll sing, it'll create music that is pretty convincingly written by real artists. So you can play AI music for people and not actually know if it's AI generated or not. I mean, there are signs of what to look for, but for the most part, it's 95% convincing for most purposes. The sound quality isn't yet quite amazing, but it's getting there. There are also a lot of sort of tools that are being implemented into things like audio software and things that are more assistive than generative. There was a song that just hit the charts here in Germany just recently. It was it was a song that was written with generative AI, and somebody kind of wrote it as a joke. It kind of has the topic is a little bit sensitive, I would say. I'm not going to get into many specifics, but regardless of what the subject matter of the song was about, it did hit the charts here in Germany and it did get pretty popular. And so we're starting to see this show up in a lot of places. And so AI in music is something that is here, and I don't think it's going to go away for a long time, obviously. On regards to these platforms, Suno and Udio, there's been question for a long time in terms of what data these platforms use to train their models, because their stuff sounds, you can make a pop song sounds really like a pop song. And they were always kind of sketchy in terms of where they modeled their data. Things like ChatGPT, they've already said they basically scrub the internet. Any kind of publicly accessible data these days, for most of these large language models and these more high-level, more popular platforms, they basically have gone out and scrubbed any kind of public-facing text and images and music and video and code that's out there, and basically have used it to train their data models. So there's a lot of discussion in terms of, are these platforms ethical for doing that? Because the stuff they spit out is basically iterations of other people's copyrighted works. And so this is a big discussion that's going to happen for a long time. I mean, I remember in the old days when MP3s came out and the whole Napster, the whole Metallica thing came out. And at the same time, I think there was the old discussion where it was Vanilla Ice did a song where he kind of ripped off a Queen sample, and he changed it like one or two notes, I think. And so there was a discussion that went on for a long time. Was it actually an iteration of a work that Vanilla Ice had the copyright on, or was it an iteration of Queen's song that they have the copyright on? And so I forget how that played out legally, but it was a huge discussion, and I think we're going to have a lot of these discussions over time. But anyway, Suno and Udio, it's always been kind of questionable. I think that the art platforms as well, it's been questionable where the art platforms got their data. Even people who say they are more ethical about it, like Adobe, there's still some questions about where they got their data to train things. But anyway, a lot of these platforms have been really protective in terms of where they got their data, and I think most of that is because they probably went out and they scrolled the internet and grabbed everything. There's even been some discussions about how some of these models are reaching peak data analysis. I don't know the terminology, but basically they've scrolled anything that is completely available on the web, and so they're running out of data, and so they're actually having to wait for new data to be generated so they can scroll that too. And so there's a lot of question in terms of, are there limitations in terms of where the modeling of these platforms are going to be until they actually have more people creating more things that make more data? And is that stuff going to be AI generated now? So AI platforms are going to be using AI generated art and creatives to actually feed their data models to create more AI stuff. And so it's kind of like the snake eating its tail, that Conan, the Conan symbol, of the snake eating its tail. That's kind of where AI is right now. And there's a lot of discussion about that. Anyway, long tangent, but when it comes to music, Suno and Udio are probably the top music generating platforms out there right now. And recently, I'm just checked out some news. It was just this month, August 2nd, the news broke that Udio and Suno had admitted to using copyrighted works for training their AI. And so there's a lot of lawsuits by a lot of record labels right now trying to sue Udio and Suno for actually using their copyrighted works to train their data models. So I think that is a huge legal can of worms for these platforms. The platforms are stating, it's an iteration. And so, if you make an iteration of something, and all art is in iteration, basically, if you look through history, all art is made by copying somebody else. That's their stance on it. The record label is saying, hey, no, you actually took our stuff and you modeled it and you used it to train your platforms. So big lawsuits are happening right now. I don't know how it's going to play out. But anyway, the topic of ethical AI in this situation is just starting to blow up. And there was a new platform that has been growing, I'd say, for the last year and a half. It finally came out. There's a platform called Lemonaide, which is it's an AI music generating program. It's basically you can go into the platform and you can generate MIDI and audio loops to use to create music with. So, a lot of hip hop and pop artists basically will take loops, and they'll take MIDI loops and they'll take audio loops and they'll use it to create new songs with. And there's this platform called Lemonaide where you can go in and you can say, hey, make me a loop in the style of such and such, or, something that's happy, something that's mellow, something that's lo-fi or whatever, in the style of a piano or whatever. And you can go in there. I'll post a screenshot here in a sec. But basically you go in here and you hit generate and it spits out, a 4 to 8 bar loop with the MIDI notes that you can actually download the MIDI notes and load it into your music software, or you can download the audio and it breaks down the audio and the different instruments. So you can have the audio that sounds like a piano or sounds like a flute or sounds like, a synth or something. and you can download these and you can incorporate them into your music making process. And the cool thing about Lemonaide is they're using, what they say is they've modeled all their data models on music that was given to them by permission to use. And I think they partnered with a platform called BeatStars. And BeatStars is basically a platform where music producers create beats and instrumentals, and they load them up there for sale. So, somebody who's a vocalist can just download it and they can sing over these beats, and they pay a licensing fee, different pricing structures. But anyway, that's BeatStars. And Lemonaide actually partnered with BeatStars in the beginning, I think, to actually utilize some of their things. And from what I understand, they were given permission in some way to actually use that stuff in some form. So Lemonaide is actually, there's a news story that came out just recently here. It says, AI music startup Lemonaide introduces new collab tool promising ethical AI models. And I'll get into that in a second. But anyway, they're really kind of, in the terms of ethical AI in types of these kind of platforms, they're actually using their marketing message to say that they've modeled their data on music that was used ethically. It means they got permission to use that music. And they're even going so far, they've created a new product here. So if you go to Lemonaide, their main product is what they call Lemonaide Seeds, which is their base model, what they use to create the loops with. They also have a new product that just came out called Collab Club models. And Collab Club models are basically, what they did is they partnered with some big name producers to basically allow them, there's producers like Kato on the track, if you know much about like hip hop and electronic music and stuff. There's Kato on the track, there's DJ Pain 1, there's Mantra, there's some different producers, and basically they partner with these producers to basically license some of their music so that you can go into the Lemonaide platform and you can pay for a particular producer that you like the style of their music, and you can actually get that producer's model to be able to generate music in the style of that producer. And by doing that, the producer gets paid probably a licensing fee, and at the same time, it's ethically using the style of that producer because they gave permission to it. And that's something that I think is going to happen a lot. I'm starting to see it in some of the platforms such as Leonardo. It's an AI art program where they're creating their own sort of branded models, such as like anime, and I think they use something called Phoenix. And so I think these sort of branded models are a business case that we're going to start seeing a lot of here in these platforms, because if you want to have permission to create a piece of art that is in the style of, then you want to ensure that whoever created that art is going to get compensated for it. And something we haven't seen in music even, I mean, sampled music has been around for 30, 40 years now, and especially in hip hop. I mean, I remember, the first hip hop songs were just samples of somebody else's music that they looped and basically, rapped over. And, for a while, there's a lot of artists that were complaining because they weren't getting, the rights and the licensing wasn't being covered. And it's still happening today. I mean, there are platforms, and it's becoming, much more mainstream to have hip hop producers, pay for licensing rights to use certain loops, but it's still coming up all the time because it's really hard to track. And so I think this traceability is always going to be in question for this kind of thing. And two, when it comes to AI, these platforms are going to have to eventually disclose what they modeled. There must be some sort of log in terms of what they modeled in there. They're going to have to be transparent about that at some point, legally, I would assume. Two, if they're not transparent, then there are certain things like, I think the state of California basically passed a law that says all AI generated stuff needs to be you need to indicate on it, there needs to be a watermark basically on the stuff so you know that it was generated by AI, even if you don't know the data that created it. And so I think a lot of these platforms, the next step, right now we have these AI generated platforms getting more realistic and more realistic, but we still don't know what information they used or what copyrighted work or what artists they used to make their iterations on. And two, in order to combat that, they're going to have to be transparent, and they're going to have to offer these as licensing for that. And so I'm seeing a lot of software, especially in the music industry, and I think this is going to transform or transfer over to a lot of the other creative industries as well, but licensed data models. So, I think just in music software, there's a lot of because I make a lot of heavy metal music, and right now I'm seeing a lot of software that is created by famous producers and also musicians, such as drum software, for example. There's a lot of heavy metal drummers that are sampling their kits and sampling their playing styles and creating software so that the software sounds exactly like that drummer's playing and that drummer's drums. And so these are sort of licensed products that you can use to create your own work with. And I think on art and all types of music, these licensed data models are going to happen a lot. And I think it's a great business case for somebody who is creative, who does have a lot of work out there and is afraid that their stuff is being copied. And most likely it already has been copied. So, I think the reality of that is the genie is out of the bottle on that. In terms of worrying about somebody using your stuff. If you create anything and put it online, these data models have already scrubbed it at some form. So it's already out there, it's already being used. But I think in the future, when people have to sort of disclose where they generated their stuff from, I think being able to have licensed models in the future will be a better business case for the people who are actually being transparent. And I think when talking ethically, I think as we move into the future, people are going to start calling these guys to the table. Like anybody who puts out any kind of work that is obviously AI generated, people are going to want to know, okay, is this AI generated? And if it is, where did you get your who are you paying royalties to in order to use their stuff? So that's one aspect. And two, the second aspect, I think, is these branded data models are going to have to be connected to the blockchain, because there's basically no other way to track this. I mean, currently, it's still a big issue, like tracking just normal music and normal stuff that's being sampled in music. You're basically just relying on somebody being nice enough to disclose it so they don't get caught. But I think in the near future, as this stuff starts getting more connected to the blockchain, it's going to be impossible basically to avoid it. So I think as the computer processors start to speed up, as the cost of operation and the cost of just running these things and the power usage starts to drop, blockchain is going to become a lot more apparent, especially just in tracking any kind of content that is publicly facing. So being able to have a licensed data model for your work and having it connected to the blockchain so anybody uses it, one, is paying a license, and two, that license money is being trackable because the blockchain is tracking it all. So lots of stuff happening now, lots of fragmented pieces of this type of discussion. But I think in the future, especially if you are in the content business, whether you are a creator or whether you are a platform or whether you create software, this is a topic that's going to come up a lot. And I think as a consultant, I would advise you to really start paying attention for this and really start planning a strategy for how, one, you digitize your content in a way that is easily modeled, two, digitize your content in a way that if it is modeled, you at least own that process. And two, if you are in the AI, industry, I should say, start thinking of ways that you can create services that allow these modeling features to be available to creators and software companies. So I think this is data modeling, and licensed data modeling is a huge business opportunity that I think we're just starting to see the very tip of the iceberg on. So I know that's a pretty big mind dump, but I just kind of wanted to get it out what is on the top of my head. I'm going to share some things in the show notes. I'm sure this is something that's going to evolve over time, so I'll be talking about it a lot. But anyway, pay attention to this stuff. Keep an eye on it because it's really going to be evolving a lot, and especially look in the music industry because this is kind of where this stuff is starting to bubble up. Did you know that about 95% of you haven't subscribed to this podcast? What are you waiting for? Click the subscribe button, hit the like button, leave a comment, and let us know. It really helps. Thanks.